When life looks okay but feels off, this is where we talk about it all. Hi, friends, and welcome to This Shit Can't Be It, where we have real, unfiltered conversations about rising through all the hard things, reclaiming your personal power. Whether you're here to be seen, to be heard, to get inspired, find the tools for your own healing, your own growth, your own evolution, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Anne, and today we're diving into healing forward, rising from childhood trauma and chaos to become a healer. Today's guest is Cecilia. We call her Cece. And after surviving childhood abuse and lots of trauma bonding, she dedicated 18 years of her life helping others in the social service sector, only to be faced with the breaking point when she lost her job. Her life was always full of disaster and chaos. Like, who can relate to that? Through deep inner healing, Cece transformed her pain into purpose and stepped into her full role as a healer. And today she's going to share what it truly means to heal forward, rise beyond trauma, and remind us that that trauma does not have to define who we are. Welcome, Cece. Thank you so much for joining me today.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here because your story, your journey, and what you do is near and dear to my heart. So, before we dive into what it is you do, what was life like prior to stepping into your own power, into your own personal power?
I mean, I can say that life was incredibly chaotic. I definitely, was healing from some serious, serious wounds from the child abuse that I had suffered. And that became my story. That victimhood became my story. So in every area of my life, I was an incredible victim, and I made a mess of every situation I was in, every friendship, every relationship, even in the work situation. And I just couldn't help myself from getting involved in things that weren't my business, distracting myself from the real work because I thought, well, if I try and solve everybody else's problems, then I don't have to worry about myself, do I? And so that was the biggest piece is understanding that I was actually looking outside of myself for anything that would remove me from the absolute obligation to shift who I was and what was going on. And so that's a really tough, hard lesson. And I probably went through multiple tough, hard lessons that brought me to my journey as a healer.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up and worded it the way you did because I've never heard it worded quite that way. And as you're talking, I'm like, yep. Like 30 plus years in the workforce for me, avoiding, creating chaos,
Yeah.
drama to avoid my own personal shifting. 100%. 100%. So, what was the moment or breaking point? And I know it's usually, I know for a lot of us, it's usually a transitional process. But what was it that had you realize that you needed to shift and start making changes?
I think through a series of drama, major drama that it was largely self-created. I involved myself with a lot of narcissists in my life. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, Anne, but really connecting with narcissistic people who were not really showing or teaching me much beyond the fact that I needed to learn how to not be a narcissist myself. And so because of this like sort of confluence of crazy events, as I said, I lost my job. And it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. But the really big thing that took place is I had confronted my abusive father. And that same day, my best friend was killed by a drunk driver. So those two things happening on the same day were probably the most jarring things that could have taken place. And so after confronting my dad, he cried, he genuinely apologized. And that helped me so much because I was waiting for that acknowledgement, that genuine apology. And not all of us get to have that, do we, from people who abuse us? And so that was a big piece. And then that same day, literally within minutes of that reconciliation happening, is when my best friend was killed. And I think her, being killed at 40, she was like one of the brightest lights in my life. And she was somebody who I depended on so heavily for joy, for happiness, for connection. And I feel like her dying just flipped a switch in my life where I was like, I'm not going to waste one more second of my existence not being the best person that I can be. And so that honestly was the catalyst for everything. And then after that, I lost my job and I was like devastated. It took me at least 3 years of like deep soul searching to figure out what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, what I was going to do with my life and my energy, my time. And so basically at that point, it was funny because I ended up having to have a total hysterectomy. I had like 19 fibroids, one that was the size of my uterus. And I knew that was all emotional holdup, right? So I had that surgery, and then I literally decided I was going to get my qualification to become a life coach right before my surgery. So I got the qualifications, I had my surgery, I recovered for 6 weeks, and I opened my business, and that was 5 years ago.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Yeah, it's tough and it takes a jolt sometimes. And for you, it sounds like you had multiple in a very short period of time for us
yeah,
to get that wake up call. And I know for me, it was a gradual wake up call. I was getting slapped in the face continually, gradually. It
yeah,
wasn't any life-changing major events. And so with that happening, with your dad actually acknowledging, because like you say, not many people get to have that moment and
no,
heal that together, let alone having the, oh my God, the apology. So that is freaking awesome. But yeah, then to lose your lifeline at the same time is
yeah,
massive. Yeah, that's
yeah.
huge. So with the loss of your job, the loss of your friend, the healing with your dad, what transpired after you started your business? Like what challenges did you run into at that point?
Times. I mean, definitely, figuring out how to run a business, what that could even look like, and I ended up connecting with my former business partner, and we had launched a business together. And then a couple of years ago, less than 2 years, she basically said, I don't think I can do this anymore. I need to figure out what I want to do on my own. And so we parted ways, and that was really hard. I didn't know if I could do this by myself. And I really sort of almost not to start my business from scratch, but I had to reconfigure what I was going to do, how I was going to do it. And so it was pretty crazy to have to reset, and kind of decide like, okay, what do I do now? And so that really was, the impetus. And it's over a year and a half now, but I'm telling you, like, I never thought my business would be the way that it is now, but I'm so beautifully blessed. I have created an incredible stream of soulmate clients that I love helping and supporting. And I'm a divine channel, I'm a medium, I'm an energy healer, I'm a soul life and business awakening mentor. I do all the things, and I love serving all different kinds of people. I work with families, I work with couples, I work with light workers. Like, it just doesn't matter. It's whatever people need in the moment. Having someone who's like a light companion and a soul guide is so important. And so that's what I do. And it's been incredible because I've definitely fought against imposter syndrome. I know lots of us go through that, and comparisonitis and things like that. But I just realized I'm just gonna take that ego stuff out of it and start figuring out how to serve from a place that actually feels good to me. And I just showed up as my genuine self, and that has served me in every single regard.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I know there's so much, like I've taken myself so much training and they harp about messaging, messaging, messaging. Who's your ideal client? Who are you talking to and what's your message so that it's aligned. And that's something that I've struggled with myself, like I got to be honest. And it's been a powerful journey and it's tough because when you're working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and you're stuck in the 3D world, what strategies, what keys, what things would you give advice to or tips and tricks to those people that are stuck in the 3D world that need to really calm their nervous system at the end of the day?
That's a great question. I think for me, I'm always saying to my clients, like, come back to your heart, come back to your center, come back to unconditional love for who you are, unconditional love for what you do. And every time I feel lost, I just serve somebody. As soon as I serve somebody, I'm like, wait a minute, Cecilia, this is why you're here, and I just sort of remember my altruistic purpose. And every time that happens, I'm just like, okay, I was brought here for a reason and a mission, and I can't give up on that because there are people waiting for me. And so I'm always saying that to the people that I work with. It's like we can get discouraged and we can give up, but weren't you created for something bigger than yourself? And I think that is the biggest thing that always reminds me that I'm here. And, I need to be here because I was supposed to fulfill something that is good for the collective. It's not just about me. And in fact, it's not about me at all. And I think that's the part where I really started to see it's like, you know, although it's wonderful and I feel great doing what I'm doing, and for sure, like it definitely gives me such incredible inspiration because of what I do. The fact is that I'm not here just for me. I'm here for the generations after me. I'm here for the generations after them. I'm here for, you know, what is this world going to look like if we're all more loving, more present, more truthful, more genuine? It's going to be better. And so that's my only goal here is to truly make the world a better place.
Yeah, I love that. And I gotta be honest, like I noticed when trauma hits social media, it blows up. We've
Mhm.
had recent events down in the States, people getting literally murdered, but there's stuff like that happening all over the world, but it all doesn't always hit the social media. So I know for
Right.
me, I try not to feed into that, first of all. I don't comment on it, I don't get involved in it. But that's when I decided that, you know what, I usually in the past would have an opinion on that stuff, and I don't anymore. I don't have that, like you say, that ego, that need to contribute to any of that anymore, because that shows how much the world is hurting. The fact that they're focusing on a specific event or specific people or specific anything that's happening that's that negative, that the the world in social media and the news is blowing up about it. That's, I agree with you, that's the time to push out the love, the care, the sincerity, because that's what people need more than anything. And I literally had this conversation just the other day with a friend of mine about, when we're posting on social media and, the lack of engagement sometimes and whatnot. And I was like, well, one thing I realized is that if you're not asking clear questions for people to engage, they're not going to. They don't know what to
Yeah.
engage. So we've got to be clear, very clear in our communication. And when it comes to clarity for you, when was that point that your clarity and your messaging just fell into place or came to be?
I just kept speaking from my heart. I think after all the courses I've taken and the things that I've connected to and the methods that I've learned, because there's so many out there and they're all good and they're all valid and they all have merit. I just realized that being myself and saying what I wanted to say from a space that felt real to me was the most important thing. And I'm always thinking about the person on the other side of that phone or that screen. What do I need to ask them? What do I need to find out from them to be able to help them even better? And so that's the only thing that I really look at. It's like, how do I connect to someone else's spirit, someone else's soul, and do it in a way where I mean what I say what I mean, I am who I am, behind and in front of the camera. That's the biggest part. Once you do that, you're good.
The authenticity. Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I know there's so many of us struggle with the authenticity piece. And I did too. Like outside of the camera, I could be me. But for some
Yeah.
reason, when that camera was on, it was like a switch. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like we're programmed actors and actresses. So it's like, I would sit back and I would question, like, what is that craziness? And for me, I realized it was the expectation of who I thought I needed to be or should be.
Yeah.
And that's something that I still struggle with to turn off because it's became such an autopilot and I didn't even realize it. And I didn't even know where it come from, because most people that looked at me as an individual would think that I was fearless or I was bold, but at the same time, I don't care who you are. You still have underlying triggers and behaviors and emotions that are brewing, that if you don't acknowledge them and bring them to the surface, you can't rewire them. I've often heard people say you can't change that which you do not acknowledge, and it's so true. So for you, like you had a lot of chaos that you had to literally flick the switch off. How
Yeah.
did you go, how did you start that whole healing process? Like what did you do to start healing to be able to flick those switches off and not allow that chaos to come in anymore or
I
limit
started
the
looking
impact
at
of the
where,
chaos?
yeah, you know what? I started looking at where I placed all the blame. And when I looked in the places where I put the blame, I realized that I had to take radical self-responsibility. And that was the only thing that really helped me was like, wait a minute, Cecilia, you get to choose what you want to experience. It's not this person's fault or that person's fault. And sure, maybe they contributed to what happened because of their actions or their treatment of me or whatever, but I get to decide what I do with that once it lands in my lap. And so when I saw that and I realized that, I was like, hold on, I get to actually control what happens in my life, right? I get to decide that I want a better, more enriched, deeper, more loving experience. Wow. And so that's where I was like, well, geez, I have a superpower, right? And as soon as I figured that out, it just changed everything. I stopped living from the space of like, woe is me. And I started to understand that if I wanted miracles in my life, I had to live and move and breathe as that miracle. And as soon as I did that, everything started shifting and turning around. And it's not, you know, a process without pain. I lost a lot of people along the way for different reasons, but they also had a purpose in my life. So the gratitude that's there for those people that I lost along the way, but also knowing that I'm shifting into a different space and place where I'm calling in and creating the kind of community around me where there are only those pure voices of love that exist, right? Like, and it's my coach did this really well, and I thought it was pretty funny. But both of them, I have two mentors, that they were like, just don't hang out with assholes, right? And I was like, you know what, that is brilliant and so true. And I realized like now I'm curating everyone around me so that I am really just abound with love, and that's all I know, and that has just completely changed everything in my auric field, where I'm like, I am truly, truly, truly given the best environment to thrive.
I love that. And you know what's funny? You brought that up because I actually created a document called 10 Keys Unlock the Unstoppable You. And that's a part of it. And that's eliminating the negativity no matter where it is. And for me,
Yeah.
like I had to, the first step for me was eliminating the news, believe it or not. Because I would come home and my husband liked to watch the news. And if I heard, like, I have a very logical mind. So if I was hearing stuff that wasn't making sense and it was being basically propaganda being pushed out by media,
Yeah.
my blood pressure would go up. I'd start cursing, ranting, and raving. And that was my first realization is that I need to cut out the news. It's toxic. So for me, it
Mm,
was cutting out the news. Like my husband could sit there and relax and watch it and not be impacted by it. But I was always impacted by it. I always had that opinion and my blood pressure would go through the
mm.
roof. And he noticed I was ranting and raving. And he's like, and you gotta just stop. So I had to learn, okay, I gotta cut things out. And that's when I realized it wasn't just things, people were gonna come and go. But like you say, they served a purpose, and the purpose was to teach us, whether it be setting the boundary or what have you. But there are people that are going to be in our lives that we do need to cut out. And sometimes that's family.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's going to be a tough decision because we believe them to be families, the be all end all. But if they're abusive and they're destructive, you have a choice. Either you keep them or you let them go. And letting them go doesn't mean they have to be gone forever, but for you to learn your boundaries in order to be able to let them back in and not have such an impact, but still love them for their toxic behavior, but not allow them to impact. And that's one thing I had to do. I had to remove that toxicity, whether it be permanently or if they came back into my life, there was new boundaries, there was new ways of interacting and communicating. And that's one thing I don't think a lot of people really talk about or really dive into is the necessity for caring, loving boundaries does not make us that doormat.
No, we can't be a doormat. We have to learn to lovingly and clearly say no when we mean no. and not just, collapse into the pleasing of others as a habit. And so, one of the biggest things that I learned was healthy boundaries are everything. And you can't let people walk all over you. If you're going to be the one leading the way, you can't let them knock you down. And so you have to be clear on which is which.
Yeah, I love that. I remember I took some Tony Robbins training and people either love him or they hate him. But I remember he said one thing that really stuck with me to this day, and that's learning to lead yourself first. Good leaders lead themselves first. It's not about leading others, it's about leading yourself and being, like you say, being that example, being the person that you need to be so others can thrive around you. And I
Yeah,
that stuck with me because it's like that's not how we were trained to process our management teams, our supervisors, our managers, our business owners, the executives.
yeah,
We weren't taught that. We were taught that they were superior. They had to give us direction. They had to give us all of the things that we didn't have. But reality is, if they're not leading themselves first, they're not capable of leading others well.
yeah,
And that was a huge mindset shift for me to wake up and realize, like, holy crap. And then, like you say, for us to be in business, you have to lead yourself first because there's no one telling you what to do every single day. So
yeah,
it
that's
it
so
it
true.
has a whole new layer. So for you, how did that leadership start impacting your own personal family? How did that start rolling over into your relationships with your kids and your husband?
No, healing is incremental and it's contagious. So the more I feel my perspectives, my understandings, the more I stopped living from my trauma, it became a completely different experience. And my entire family has totally shifted because of the work that I led, right? In myself. And so who you're being is what you are seeing every single day in and around you. And so if I am being the kindness, most forthright, most respectful person, then so are they. And so, really, it is truly, truly the magic of perception. If we want to create harmony in our lives, we have to be the harmony. And so, I think that that's the part that, as soon as I understood it, I was like, okay, so let me just take another look at how I've been showing up, right, for myself and what that translates to for everyone else in my life. And it's just been the most incredible thing because when you discover true love from deep within, then it is truly reflected back to you in every single person, place, opportunity, or thing. And and that is where I see the levity of the deep work and why it's so important.
I love that. I love that. And I'm glad you brought that up because, like I say, being part of so many different types of groups, that's one of the comments I often see is men and women saying my spouse doesn't support me and they're not doing this, they're not doing that. And in the comments now, I could never see it before, but in the comments now, I can see it's expectations. Like that's where the friction comes from, is that you have expectations of having support versus just supporting yourself and allowing everything else to fall into place.
Yeah.
And it's tough. So I know like I sit back and I look and I'm like, holy crap, like they say the world is your oyster and they're not joking. Like so many people struggle in so many different areas. And that's kind of been my mission. And I love that it's your mission to help heal and help them become aware so that they can see and evolve as individuals because we can't control what other people do. We can't change their mind. We can't
Yeah.
improve their mindset unless they want it first. And
Mm.
yeah, it's there's nothing we can do unless they want to do it themselves. So with that, how do you like to reach out to your clients? What is the best way for them to reach you? I'm going to have your links and stuff in the descriptions down below all of this, but what is
Yeah.
the best way
I've
for
got
people to
I've
connect with
got my
you?
free 20-minute higher self channeling call. That's one of the gifts that I have is I'm able to tap into other people's higher selves. And so it has built my whole business. It's been really beautiful. And the more I do it, the more that I see that we all just need to listen to our divine voices and and really, amalgamate and blend that into one. So yeah, look me up on Facebook. I'm all over Facebook, Cecilia Tement, and then my free 20-minute link is the best way to connect with me. And I love being able to serve, like, come and experience me, and what I do. And you'll see and feel the shift, even after one conversation. And I think that's the beauty of energy, isn't it? Because we can
Yeah.
elevate it and we can acclimate to it and we can, embody it in our spirits. And that's really what I teach and I guide, and I show
Yes.
you how to trust yourself again. That's the biggest
Oh,
part of this work.
that was my biggest roadblock, was trusting myself. And I can vouch for
Yeah.
her work, people.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been freaking awesome. And like I say, I'm going to have your link below in the video. This is going to be up
Amazing.
on YouTube and Spotify. And of course, I'll be blasting it out on social media. And I just want to say to all you entrepreneurs out there, she has built her business without websites, without funnels, without all the craziness that we
Yeah.
tend to get involved in. I'm guilty of that. I love that stuff, but I love creating it as well because it helps my juices flow. But you did it all without any of it. You're on Facebook with a
Yeah.
Facebook group in your calendar.
That's,
So
that's all.
that's awesome.
It's possible. And like, yeah, I'm dipping into funnel stuff now, but honestly, like, you can do it. You can do it. Just when you think you can't, think again. It can be simple, it can be straightforward, and it can be real. So, just don't give up on what you're meant to do. It's so important. The world needs you.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Take care, everybody. And remember, breathe deep and relax your nervous system. And we'll talk again soon. Take care, everyone.